Not long ago, I was sorting through some of my dad's old belongings. As I sifted through the items, memories began to flood back, each one more vivid than the last. I thought time was dragging on, but before I knew it, the shadows had lengthened, and it was already evening. Among the old items were some worn clothes, black vinyl records, and a few ceramic dolls. Suddenly, a photo caught my eye. It was a picture of my dad in his youth, sitting on a couch with a young white woman. Back then, he was skinny and sported a hairstyle that was probably trendy at the time. It looked a bit odd. As for the girl, aside from a slight double chin, she was quite pretty. When I asked my dad about the photo, he said it was taken during his 3rd year of college, while he was traveling around Europe.
There's still something about this girl that I don't quite understand to this day,
He said, a hint of mystery in his voice. I sensed there was more to the story, and wondered if he was about to share a romantic escapade from his European adventures. But then he continued,
No, it's something that made me feel really uneasy.
What? A scary story? I asked, intrigued.
Yeah,
He replied, his tone growing somber. I had been in Europe for about a month and a half, heading to a rural coastal town in western Finland. As usual, people were curious about seeing a Japanese person and asked me many questions. One of the hotel staff, a young waitress, was particularly interested in Japan. She had majored in Oriental culture in college. The girl was working at the hotel during her summer break. Whenever she finished her shift, she would come over to chat with me. Her English wasn't great, but it was good enough for simple conversations. At the time, I even thought maybe something romantic could happen, and I was tempted to stay there for a week because of this rather naive thought. Looking back now, I realize how foolish I was. On the 3rd night, after having dinner and chatting with her in the lobby, I went back to my room. Normally, I'd fall asleep right away, but that night, I couldn't sleep for some reason. I kept tossing and turning in bed. Suddenly, I heard a sound. It was like a woman's scream, or something like that. Hearing it, I froze. I glanced at the clock. It was 2 a.m. I opened the curtains and peered outside. Finnish nights were still quite bright, but the town was eerily silent, as the locals tended to retire early. In front of the hotel lay a beautiful stone-paved square. I scanned the area, but saw no one who could have made the noise. I opened the window and looked down the street to the left. There, I could vaguely make out a figure, seemingly walking toward me. Then, the scream pierced the night again, louder this time, reverberating through my entire body and filling me with unease. The figure I had seen earlier was now moving faster. I quickly closed the window, but couldn't resist peeking through the gap in the curtains. The screaming continued, relentless and haunting. By the end, it didn't even sound like a scream anymore, more like wailing. Despite the noise, none of the neighbors stirred. Not a single light flickered on. Amidst the disturbing sound, I saw a figure entering the square. It looked like a woman in a nightgown, her presence adding to the unsettling atmosphere. For some reason, she was shaking her head while running around the square, her dark brown hair in a mess. It was such a strange sight that I couldn't look away, wondering, who is this woman? Why is no one else coming out? Could she be something not of this world? Suddenly, the woman stopped, right in the middle of the square. At some point, the disturbing screams had ceased, and the surroundings were now enveloped in silence. That's when I realized something was terribly wrong. A chill ran up from the soles of my feet. I turned and tried to get back into bed, but just as I was about to pull up the covers, I heard a knock at the door. Startled, I wondered, who could be knocking at this hour? As I hesitated, the knocking came again. Not loud, but very clear. Nervously, I looked through the peephole. It was the female waitress. Without thinking, I immediately opened the door. She looked extremely tense and grabbed my shirt, whispering into my ear, "Whatever you do, don't look outside. Stay quiet." With that, she left quickly. I stood there for a while, stunned, until I heard the screaming again behind me. Frightened, I let out a shout and rushed back to bed, wrapping myself in the blanket. The screaming didn't stop. It felt as if it was targeting my room. And then, maybe it was my imagination, but it seemed like the sound was getting closer. But I was on the 5th floor. 2nd floor, 3rd floor, 4th floor. The sound seemed to be right outside my window. And then I blacked out. I woke up late the next morning. Despite what had happened, I actually felt okay, refreshed, as if last night was just a bad dream. I went down to the restaurant to have breakfast. The waitress came over to pour water with a big smile, as if the tension from last night had never happened. I asked her about last night, but she just smiled and left without saying anything. Watching her walk away, I felt a bit strange. Then I noticed a folded note next to my glass. Could it be a love letter? Is my romantic adventure finally about to begin? I stuffed the note in my pocket, hurriedly finished my breakfast, and rushed back to my room. The note read, "You have been chosen as a sacrifice. Leave immediately." What? I had no idea what was going on. Why would I be chosen as a sacrifice? My mind was racing, and I thought I should ask her about it. As I stood up, someone knocked on the door. It was the hotel owner. He was a friendly guy. He said,
You were supposed to stay until the 20th, right?
I replied, "Yes." The hotel owner then said,
Could you stay a few more days? We'd love to hear more about Japan. I'll give you a discount.
I hesitated. Well, then he added,
She, the waitress, said she'd like you to stay a few more days too.
As soon as he said that, something clicked in my head. I quickly replied, "No thanks. I appreciate the offer, but I need to leave." Oh, I just remembered. I'm supposed to meet up with some friends. The owner looked a bit disappointed, but didn't push any further after I refused again. I packed my things immediately and left the hotel by noon. I wanted to say goodbye to her, but I couldn't find her anywhere. As I passed through the lobby, it felt like someone was watching me the whole time. I left Finland that day. My dad's story ended. Dad said, even now, I still don't know what that was all about. I later told this story to a Finnish person I met in Denmark, but he couldn't explain it either. He said rural people don't usually do things like that.
Could that screaming woman have been some kind of local legend? A monster that requires a human sacrifice?
I said. Dad answered me, "I've thought about that." But the Finnish guy said he hadn't heard of any such monsters. My dad glanced at the photo. I asked curiously.
Did you ever see the screaming woman's face?
Dad said, "No, strangely enough, I don't have any memory of her face." Dad shifted his gaze from the photo to me. Speaking of strange things, that girl, the waitress at the hotel, for some reason, I can't remember her name. There's no way I wouldn't have asked for it. If you want to see my videos faster, please like and subscribe to my channel and press the bell icon to get new video updates.